Hey, good morning, everybody. It's about 7:15 on this Thursday, and you kind of see um, you kind of see the title down below on this live stream. Yeah, I wanted to talk about this because, and I first of all, I do apologize for any kind of lag or disruption. Basically, I have the new XB6 modem from Xfinity, and for some reason, the internet my computer to the internet cable and all that seems to like to go off, kind of temporarily go off for about a millisecond and then come back on. It's like you go to a page and it'll say you're not connected or something like that, and then all of a sudden a second or a millisecond later it comes back on because it's obviously loading and the loading causes the thing to go off or something. I don't know. But mostly the emphasis when it comes to this modem is Wi-Fi. Go figure. Um, anyway, I wanted to come on here and yeah, I want to I want to hold on for a sec. Let me again. I do apologize for any lag. Always audio. No, never mind. I was checking something. But anyway, I wanted to come on here because it's appropriate that we're at that time of year where San Diego Comic Con has just passed, and now we're entering into BronyCon, which somewhat a has somewhat unofficially already started and officially starts tomorrow. In fact, BronyCon on the Twitter comes out and basically says, one more kind of counts down the dawns until, they kind of count down the dawns until things, um, until we get to that moment, if you know what I mean. They basically they say second dawn, final dawn, third dawn, stuff like that until BronyCon officially begins. And I guess that's kind of cool of them to do, kind of do the countdown in that way, to kind of say, yeah, within 48 hours, 72 hours, now 24 hours, this convention begins. And this is a convention that's been going on since 2011, when it was initially known as Brony NY Con, basically the NY capitalized for New York. And then after like the first couple of years, they dropped it and it went to Syracuse, New Jersey, or Syracuse, New York, New Jersey, and then straight to Baltimore. And now is a Baltimore mainstay until at least we would assume 2021. I would like it if BronyCon came out here to the Central Valley. I mean, can you imagine Modesto, California, or Sacramento? Hold on for a sec. I just said that because I got to go grocery shopping a little while. But can you imagine a place like, Sacramento and sorry about that, just adjusting some here. But can you imagine a place like Sacramento, Modesto, and all those places just clamoring with business, overfilled, all the businesses, restaurants, hotels, and everything just overflowing with business because of the fact that you have BronyCon in the vicinity. It's pretty cool. It's that. I mean, you talk about business being up, and you talk about like my job being busy and crazy. That would do it. You know, that would do it because it'd be like, wow, about freaking time we had something like that around here. Um, but yeah, it's appropriate that it is BronyCon time, BronyCon season, and with BabsCon that happened in April around that time, I figured why not? And of course, like I said, San Diego Comic Con just passing. I figured why not talk about this because this seems to be still a subject that honestly I don't get why people don't understand. Um, I'll give you. I mean, as the title says, we're going on 8.5 seasons now. The second half beginning August 4th, officially. No sneak peeks or anything, because pretty much that's what we got last weekend was Yakety Sax, which chronologically and continuity wise comes before or comes after the End in Friend, which is a episode focusing on Rainbow Dash and Rarity's friendship and them questioning why they're still friends if they can't find anything fun to do together. And Yakety Sax pretty much spoiled the outcome in a sense because it's like, how can you have these two working on the same page, in the same group and all that if the friendship is over? You can't. So obviously we don't know what the outcome is, but pretty much spoiled the fact that they're going to remain friends. So go figure. And as we speak right now, a lot of the prominent um analysis community of the My Little Pony Friendship is Magic, and My Little Pony Equestria Girls franchise, the analysis community, the fans who are fans themselves, are all heading off right now on airplanes to Baltimore nonstop or with a few stops for BronyCon. And you check on Twitter, you go hashtag BronyCon or something like that. You got people like Aramount, you got people like Firebrand, you got people like Watchful, Lightning Bliss, Silver Quill. These are very prominent people in the analysis community that are right now up in the air as we speak, or stopping at an airport in another state for a layover until they board the next plane. And I wish them nothing but the best of luck doing that. So, and I wish them all the best having fun over at BronyCon because it's going to be a little hard to kind of top maybe what San Diego Comic Con did. Uh, apparently not all the analysis community is going to major portions of the analysis community, the Rift Cafe community, as they call themselves, or the secret Rift Cafe community, is going to be at BronyCon, but I'm pretty sure they'll still try to stay interactive with it and try to you know put their 2 cents in as to um as far as their thoughts go on whatever goes on there. So um but yeah, getting back on topic here, it's like I was saying, it's been about 8.5 seasons, and it's just kind of weird that this entire fan that well, it's going on 8.5 seasons, like I said, on August 4th, and basically nearly a decade because we got right now, as far as we know, one more season to go of My Little Pony Friendship is Magic and potentially Equestria Girls. we got one more season, um, potentially, because there is a possibility that we may get another season. They haven't ruled that out. In fact, one fan, a kid, asked Megan McCarthy in the panel at San Diego Comic-Con uh, how many more seasons they plan to do another season or so, and they or something like that, and they said basically, I think the question was if they were planning to do any more seasons, and I think the answer came along the fact of they hope to do many more. So there's a possibility we may get a decade's worth of MLP. But with that said, with that said, as of right now, we only have one more season to go, but that could all change. Maybe here at BronyCon this weekend, maybe next year, we don't know. Okay, I already put watchful on there, so yeah. Like I said, I was just checking something to see who I've already sent this to. But again, getting back on topic, like I said, we're at 7.5. We're going on 8.5 seasons. Well, actually, we're at 7.5 seasons because the second half of season 8 is starting August 4th. So I'll have to correct the title there, but basically it's 7.5 seasons. As a matter of fact, let me correct that now while I'm thinking about it. There we go. Sorry about that. But yeah, it's like it's almost what in 7.5 seasons in, going on the second half of season 8, August 4th, nearly a decade, if you will. And what's amazing about this, what's amazing about all this is you still have a lot of folks out there, a majority of folks out there that they still don't get it. They don't understand it. I mean, you would think almost a decade later they would understand, oh, this is just a pop culture phenomenon that a lot of people, not just kids, but adults, adolescents, teens, you name it, high schoolers, middle schoolers, college students, stuff like that. This is just a pop culture phenomenon that they're into that's basically taking the world by storm and has yet to hit a brick wall all and be stopped. And you think they would kind of have that acknowledgement, that understanding, that okay, this is just something that people are still fans of even almost a decade later, and it shows no signs of stopping as of right now. But like I said, there are still people that don't get it. There are still people out there that look at this and they're like, that is so weird. That is so unusual. That is not right. And look, I get totally what they're talking. And look, I mean, there's a lot of us that are part of the official Riff Cafe community and analysis, TF2 analysis, you name it. There is a lot of us that get where they're coming from, because there is a lot of people in this fan base either associated with the Riff Cafe analysis community, like KP and Lightning Bliss and Silver Quill and Firebrand and such, and Aramount. What was I saying? I just lost my train of thought there. Sorry. There's a lot of us that like official members, if you will. Well, I wouldn't say official members, but like our fellow fans, I should say, like like those I just mentioned, there's a lot of us, whether we're part of something like the Rift Cafe and the TF2 analysis or whatever. There's a lot of us overall that at first didn't think much about My Little Pony Friendship is Magic. A lot of us just blew it off when it first came out, thinking, oh, it'll probably last maybe a season or so, and that's it. I mean, Megan McCarthy uh, and Lauren Faust, well, Lauren Faust, when she developed it, I think initially had plans for at least to go 3, 4 seasons, and that was it. The third season, well, actually about 3 seasons, the third season ending with Twilight being an alicorn and everybody achieving their dreams. But because the show gained such a popular following, because people took the time to check it out and be like, "Hey, this is different. This is different than what we've seen before. This is not the ponies we know." And through, of course, the mirror and again, like I said, through the well, as I'm saying, through the miracles of the internet, they were able to find out information as to why it's so good. They were able to find out that Lauren Faust took inspiration from the original Gen 1 and took it a step further and improved on it. She basically said, look, what's really hindering this franchise from being the success it is not all the pony characters have distinct personalities. They don't have their own individuality. And she wanted to change that. Heck, she saw what she did with Powerpuff Girls. You pretty much could see, she obviously saw, like I said, she obviously saw what she did with Powerpuff Girls and helped out there. So she realized, hey, if that could work, maybe I can apply something similar here. And the rest is history. The rest is absolutely history. And, that's why it has such a certain appeal. I mean, I even said it in a video I do at my phone here at my house. I basically said that the reason I like it, and the reason I'm sure a lot of people like it, is it has that nostalgic feel. It has a feel to it that basically makes you feel like that when you watch it, it feels like a show that basically you could watch in any decade and it would fit in great. It would fit in terrifically. It's a show that basically you could watch that as it's celebrating right now the 35th anniversary by bringing out merchandise, shirts, and stuff with the characters in 80s fashion, in 80s style, with an 80s style and fashion inspired for it. You look at that and you're thinking, obviously Hasbro kind of sees the possibility that this is a show that could fit in the 80s, could fit in the 90s, and it would still work. It's that good. It feels like an ageless show. And like I said, I think the appeal is if you grew up in the 80s and the 90s, you look at this show now and you're like, this is the kind of show I probably would have enjoyed back in the 90s, back in the 80s. 80s, had it come out then. I mean, don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong. We did have MLP back in the 80s. It's the one that started it all. Not just not just the cartoon, not just the toy line, but the cartoon as well. It's the one that started it all. And people loved it. I mean, sure, it wasn't on the grounds of a Transformers or anything, but it was still popular enough that about 5 years later, or so a few years later, it spun a spinoff called Generation 2, which tried to modernize the characters and modernize the setting, and it was a semi-mediocre success. Now, it would take a while before they would do a Gen 3, which a lot of people met with mixed reactions, mostly not so good. but there were some good moments, especially when they went into what was known as 3.5, generation 3.5. But still, generation 3 was met with a lot of mixed reactions. But you could tell, even with that, and even when they did the Gen 3.5, you could tell that they were onto something. And I'm guaranteeing, maybe I'm wrong, Lauren Faust looked back, looked at all the good elements from all the previous 3 generations and said, I'm going to apply certain elements from each into the show, and it's going to hopefully work. And it did. I mean, if you take a look at, what was it? My Little Ponytails, which is Gen 2. You take a look at that, you pretty much see the facial reactions and the different personalities spewing out of that with the characters. You could see the influence from that brought on to Friendship is Magic tenfold. So, yeah, it's again, like I've said, I think it's just the fact that it feels like a show you could watch in any decade, in any time frame. But still, there is, but like I said, still there is a lot of people that just don't get it. A lot of people that just don't understand why someone the age someone that's in the in the age bracket of a Dusty Cat, a Silver Quill, a Lightning Bliss. People that grew up in the 80s with the originals, why are they into this now? Can't they just move on from it? It's stupid. It feels weird. It feels childish. And again, the reason being is because it feels like it's a show that could have appealed to us as kids back in the 80s, back in the 90s. It has that feel to it. I mean, look, there's no doubt. There is no doubt people, again, like I said, don't understand it. My family members have pretty much, I'll be honest with you, okay, members of my family, how do I put this? Members of my family, they get it, but they still don't get it. That's the whole point. They get it, but they don't get it. I mean, they understand it, but they don't understand it. It's like they understand and respect why I like it, but they still don't understand why I respect and like it. And again, like I said before, it's the fact that it feels nostalgic. It feels like a show you could watch back in the 80s, in the 90s. That's basically, to me, the appeal to it. It's not just the great characterization, the great characterization of the characters, the character development and all that. It's not just the great continuity nods and connections and stuff. It's not just the great world building and story arcing. It's the fact that all that combined, it's the fact that with all that as well, with all that, I should say, it's early, so I do apologize if I'm stumbling over my words. That even with all that, it has a feel to it that makes you feel like, yeah, I could watch this. That I could have watched this kind of show back in the 80s, back in the 90s. I could have watched this on a weekday afternoon in the 80s or Saturday morning in the 80s. I could have watched this kind of show and enjoyed it. Hmm. So so there's no doubt about that. There's no doubt about that. It's to me, to me, that's one of the main reasons it works. It's not just the great characters. I mean, each of these characters have a personality to them that you can relate to and enjoy. And placed correctly in the right kind of atmosphere, story wise, episodic wise, comic book wise, plays off plays off the other characters very well. I mean, one of the more anticipated episodes last year, or two of the most anticipated episodes last year, were A Royal Problem and The Perfect Pair. Perfect Pair was a story that people were hoping for. Getting acknowledgement of who Applejack's parents were, and finding out their history. And at first, people thought, if and of course, at first, people were a little worried that okay, we're going to get this, but is it going to be good? And lo and behold, all the hype behind it turned out to be true. That yes, this is good. Yes, this is something you need to see. Yes, this shows that a show originally meant for young kids can be very mature in its tones, in its atmosphere. It can be emotional. It can bring tears to your eyes. I mean, heck, there are people that come on YouTube and do analysis reacts and Bronies reacts that when they saw this episode, pretty much legitimately were just taken aback of how good it was and emotionally driven it was. It even hit them on a personal level. That's that's basically how good this show is, and that's what made the show so appealing to a lot of fans, adults primarily, high schools, whatever, because when it relates to certain subjects that we deal with here in the real world, it gets you talking. It gets you talking. It gets you wanting to see more of it, if you will. It makes you want to see more. It makes you want to say, I want more of what I just saw. I want more of that. And at times you'll get it. Even if it takes another season or so, you'll get it. There's no doubt about that. You will get it. It's like it's it's just one of those situations to where you're like, this is what we need. This is the kind of evidence we need. I mean, when I saw it, I basically messaged it or put a link on it, a link to the episode or wherever they could find the episode. I basically said to everybody there, and I even said to my family, you need to see this episode. This will show you why people love this show, why they love My Little Pony Friendship is Magic. Because of an episode like that. And then the other episode that was anticipated for season 7 was A Royal Problem, because it was our first official princess related episode along with Starlight. It basically gave us 3 very popular characters working somewhat together. Celestia, Luna, who we've been wanting to see have an episode to themselves and interact, and then you throw in Starlight because it's part of because she's going on her first friendship mission, and this is a big one. You got all you got all the perfect ingredients for a masterpiece, for something that people will enjoy, and it delivered. It delivered on all cylinders. I mean, it was basically a great comedic episode with a great message, and that is to those appreciate those for what they do and not think that what they do is easier than what you do. You just appreciate each other for what the other does. It's somewhat of a great lesson. It really is. It really is. And again, you combine that with the fact that you had comedic elements thrown in, and it's like, holy crap. It's like, holy crap. It's good. It's got a good story, all right, and the comedy writes itself because, in a sense, you get to see sides of certain characters you didn't think you would see before. I mean, Luna, yes, you've seen her characterization a lot, but in previous seasons. But now you're seeing more Celestia, and now you're seeing them playing off each other, working off each other in a way that you didn't expect, and it works. It really does. And it's that, and again, it's those kind of stories. Perfect Pair, Royal Problem, Shadow Play. These are the kind of stories that get people talking, get people enjoying this show. It really does. And I mean, okay, let's take a look at some other shows that primarily are supposed to be kid shows, yet they got a massive following. Steven Universe, Gravity Falls, The New DuckTales, Adventure Time. Heck, even Littlest Pet Shop, as crazy as that sounds, all have uh, all have an adult following, all have adult fan bases. Maybe not as big community wise and fan base wise as MLP, but still it's decent enough to where it's noticeable and it gets people talking. And why? Because they are not just appealing to kids, they are appealing to all ages, adults, alts, kids, high schoolers, middle schoolers, college students, adults. And sometimes it feels like primarily they're appealing. If at times it does feel like, and I will admit this, it feels like they're primarily appealing to adults more so than kids. Why? Because the people behind a lot of these shows were like us. They grew up in the 80s. They grew up in the 90s. They grew up in the late 70s. And they're like, you know what? I want something. And they'll probably, in growing up in that time, they enjoyed what they saw. And then looking at what's become, uh, what became of animation and stuff later on as they got older, they probably thought to themselves, you know what? I would like to have something. I would like to see something that's similar to what I grew up on. I would, if I'm these kids, I would want something that I grew up on. I would want to put something interesting that would catch their attention, and not just their attention, but maybe even adults, all ages. I mean, again, why do you think DuckTales, the new DuckTales, is doing well? Why do you think Steven Universe is doing well? Why do you think Gravity Falls is doing well? Huh? It's because of the fact that the people behind it grew up in the time frame that we did, and they basically understand, hey, we need shows that not only appeal to this age demographic and this generation, but to all generations. And that's why you have shows like Friendship is Magic. That's why you have its spinoff, Equestria Girls. That's why you have, Gravity Falls, Adventure Time, the new DuckTales, Star versus the Forces of Evil, and whatnot. That's why you have them. That's why you have them presented the way they are, because they are being presented the way the creative staff, the writers, the developers want to see them presented in a way that's very reminiscing of animation and animated series and cartoons of 80s and 90s nostalgia, hybrided into what shows are like today. So even if you put in what's known as the Cal Art style for certain shows, as long as it has a certain appeal to it that's very reminiscing of what was great and what made animated programming great great back in the day, then you can look beyond the animation. You can look beyond the flaws, the animation errors and stuff. And that's why Friendship is Magic is so well received, because it's a perfect blend and hybrid of what was good in the past and what's good in what's good today. In other words, In other words, the storytelling and everything is reminiscing. It's very reminiscing of great shows, of the great animated programming, great storytelling back then in the 80s and the 90s, but it's also a good hybrid because it's still doing what the show initially was set out to do, especially in today's world, and that's teach and that's educate and teach a lesson, if you will, with its story, you know, or send a message or apply a message or a moral to the story. You know, does everybody agree sometimes with the morals or the messages that get sent out at the end of an episode? Not all the time, because here's the thing. Because here's the thing. Sometimes those messages and morals are just put in there the way they are, whether people like them or they don't, because of the fact that sometimes they got to do episodes that, even though they don't make sense or the structure is a little off and everything, to kind of appeal to that, to kind of be be set as a, basically I look at, okay, how do I put this? Yakety Sax, which was a surprise episode, new episode of season 8, part of the surprise summer deal on Discovery Family, has been given critical mixed reviews. Some like it, some don't. And those that don't like it point out that the structure feels a little off. Like it's a decharacterization of certain characters like Pinkie Pie and stuff like, and the rest of the main 7. But I think what's going on there is the person behind the episode that wrote it, the person that wrote the episode, is going by basically the standards of today. And that standards is, as good as the episode is, you still have to drive home a moral. You have to drive home a message that makes sense, or at least makes sense on a kiddie level. So, that's why you got, I guess, the ending so that's why we, got the ending that we did. It may not be a very popular ending in the eyes of a lot of fans or make sense, but if a kid can get, but if the young intended mind gets the message of, hey, if this person likes what they're doing, then let them like it, let them enjoy it. Don't make fun of them. Don't tell them that, don't make fun of them or anything, or don't be rude. Basically, the message overall is, hey, if you feel they are not good at something, ask them either suggest getting them help to make them better, or don't make them feel like, oh, you shouldn't be playing it because you're terrible, kind of deal. It's a weird, strange message, yes. It's a weird, strange message, yes, but still, as long as the message in any kind of way gets through to the originally intended young mind of the kid, then that's all that really matters to Hasbro. That's really all that matters. It doesn't have to make sense. No, I mean, doesn't. Well, yes, it has to make sense, but sometimes, it doesn't always make sense. It doesn't always make sense because of the fact that a lot of people feel like, what was the less? I mean, adults like us that, like I said, now work on these kind of shows. We look at that, we're like, okay, what was the point? And then we got to realize, oh, little kids is the only that to a little kid, the message is going to be, if it makes you happy or makes your friends happy, don't judge them. Don't judge them for that or anything. And if that's the message that they wanted to get through to a little kid, that, hey, if your friend likes doing what they're doing, don't make fun of them, don't judge them. Or if you feel they need help improving, help them. I don't know. Sometimes I think it's sort of a subtle message. I think sometimes the message in Yakety Sax was sort of a subtle message, not just a message of, hey, don't judge somebody because for liking something that you may find annoying or you don't understand. Honestly, I think sometimes the message sent out was, because like I said, the message could have, for a young kid, is, hey, if your friend likes doing what they're doing, let them do it. And if you feel they need help improving, suggest help or help them out yourself. But I think sometimes the subtle message in there, but I also think there was a subtle message in there. And that subtle message was Pinky representing the fandom and the rest of the main six representing those that don't understand. Pinky likes his a xylophone or whatever it is, and and by her liking that, it's like us liking My Little Pony, and the rest of the main six being the fandom that just don't get it. But if it makes them happy, then it be. So so that's the message. So if that's a subtle message to adults, to the adult fan base, then okay, we can understand that. Then okay, we can accept that. But it basically felt like it wasn't clear. And when I look back on it, I think mainly because of the fact that the message was originally intended for a younger kid to basically accept the fact that if your friend likes doing something that makes them happy, let them do it. I don't know. But again, that's why but again, when you have a when you have criticization by adults on an episode like that, it's mainly because of the fact that the adults, the adult fan base, the analysis community know that there are people our age, their age, working on these shows of today that wouldn't stoop to this level of writing an episode as confusing and convoluting as this one. They would write something good. They would write something better. And again, that's the appealing of the show. Now is the fact that, like I said, we're used to seeing a good hybrid of storytelling and animation. It's like, again, you may not have to agree with the style of the animation, but if the story that's presented, continuity wise or not, is good enough to grab your attention, then you don't have to worry about the rest. Because like I said, you got all these other shows. Heck, whether you like it or not, Legend of Korra and its predecessor, Avatar, all succeeded because of the fact that they had that nostalgic feel of being a show that could have easily been broadcast in the 80s and the 90s. And that's what I think a lot of these people, and I know I sound like I've been rambling for a bit, so I do apologize. But that is basically what a lot of these people that may not still understand why fans like me, fans like Silver Quill, fans like Lightning Bliss, Golden Fox, and anybody else out there, this is something that they have to understand. That even though they may not still get it, even though it's nearly been a decade and this fandom is still going on, still going strong, that even though it's nearly been a decade, you still have folks that don't understand it. And I think the reason they don't understand it is they don't see why we like it. And the reason why we like it is the fact that, like I said in one video, it feels nostalgic. It's a perfect hybrid of, it's a basic hybrid, if you will, of a nostalgia and today. It's like the story elements and everything, episodic continuity, everything feel very nostalgic of something you could have seen in an 80s or 90s show with a decent mixture of what is necessary for today's shows to succeed. Basically, like like I said, the whole what's the message, what's the moral, what's the lesson to be learned kind of thing, mixed in properly with a great story element that you could easily see be used in a show back in the 80s and the 90s. That's why shows like Gravity Falls, Star, Adventure Time, Steven Universe, and My Little Pony have such a following, and even the new DuckTales, because of the fact that you have story elements in there that could be applied, could have, if not, could have been applied to shows, animated programming back then, and it would have worked even then it would have worked. And I think as time goes on, the more lenient and less of a restraint the educational EI, FCC, whatever has on television, and the more freedom programs like Friendship is Met, and the more freedom, I should say, that creative staff and writers of Friendship is Magic, Star, Gravity, you know, um, Adventure Time, Steven Universe, and all that, you know, as as time goes on, like I said, and less restrict, and things will become more lenient, and the FCC's EI thing is no longer a factor, which pretty much it's not been a factor for a while, but it's still there. You can see that. You could see that, especially, at the ending of things like Friendship is Magic episodes, Equestria Girl episodes, Steven Universe, Gravity Falls, stuff like that. You could still see it there. You could still see its influence. As time goes on, it's going to become less of an influence, and we're getting, in my opinion, from what I'm noticing, we're getting towards a time to where show creative staffs could be more lenient, can have more free will in what they're able to showcase, what they're able to write as far as stories go and character developing and world building goes. You know, I mean, why do you think Starlight Glimmer has gone on to be one of the more is going on has gone on and is still going on to be one of the more popular characters now? Because as time has gone on in the couple of seasons she's been around, her character has slowly, organically progressed and developed into a character that'll basically tell you like it is. That won't really take your BS. She'll tell it like it is. So for those out there that still don't get it, hopefully if they watch this video, they can have a better understanding. Yes, we watch it because of the characters. We watch it because when you take a look at a lot of the programming out there, there's not that, I mean, as good as some might be, there's not that much that is good. And there's not that much out there that, really people can, sit back and talk about. I mean, even the live action shows, as good as they are, not many of them are talked about. I mean, yeah, here's an exception. Riverdale. People like Riverdale because the people behind freaking Riverdale grew up in the 80s and the 90s, and they pretty much were like, hey, how can we make Riverdale good? Oh, I know. Let's go in a direction that we always felt it should. And there you go. And there you go. It's basically the fact that It's basically the fact that when you take a look at how these shows are presented, you come to realize that the reason they're doing so well, animated, maybe even live action wise, is because the people behind them grew up at a time where they felt, hey, if it went this direction, it could probably be good. And that was when we were kids or even preteens, or even teenagers, period. We always would look at something and be like, man, if they went in this direction or they went this way, it'd be really good. Now we're getting that chance to prove that. And that's why Friendship is Magic is so good. That's why Equestria Girls is getting to that level now as well, if not already. Because of the fact that it's the people behind it grew up at a time when they would look at something like My Little Pony or a show like Equestria Girls and be like, man, there could be so much more. I mean, how many times did young girls, when they would watch Maxie's World or a Bobby-inspired show like Maxie's World, be like, go out and do playtime with their dolls and maybe even play out little dramas and all that? How many times did kids do that? How many times did young girls do that? A lot, right? Well, maybe not a lot, but still, there were probably a decent amount, right? So you can't tell me that those that did that aren't thinking, man, I would like to do. Aren't thinking that, aren't looking back in that with fondness and thinking, you know what, I should apply my fantasies as a kid when I play dolls and all that to a show I'm creating and go from there. You can't tell me that. You can't tell me that. You can't tell me that's not true, because it is. But here's the thing. Here's the overall thing in the end. Hasbro knows they have an adult fan base. Hasbro knows that a majority of the fans are adults. They do. They know a majority of the fans are adults. Yes, you got kids in there. Yes, you got teenagers in there, but they know a majority of the fans are adults because of the fact that these are adults that grew up in a time, 80s, 90s, late 70s, what have you, early to mid 2000s or throughout the 2000s, but mostly the 80s, 90s, and late 70s, that have an appreciation for not just good animation, but good storytelling. Because we grew up on it through a lot of animated programming. And when you see something like Friendship is Magic, depending on the changing of executive producers, you know, depending on the changing of executive producers or how many creative writers come in and comprise of the creative staff, what have you, when you see a show like Friendship is Magic, showcased the way it is, and you see that it has story arcs and stories. It has story arcs and stories over all continuity, character development, and all that. That feels very reminiscent of something you saw back when you were a kid. Of course, you're going to have an appreciation of it. Of course, you're going to accept it. And Hasbro sees that now. Hasbro, believe it or not, of all people, of all companies, sees that. I mean, why do you think they're licensing out things like this? Huh? Do you think this is just for play? If it was for play, this thing would be detachable. These figures would be detachable. They're not. This is a fan series. They created a freaking series of toys or collectibles called the Fan Series as a thank you to the fans. Yeah, as a thank you to the fans, they created a fan series called Guardians of Harmony and then slowly transitioned into Fan Series as a thank you to the fans, because they know if it wasn't for the fan base, especially the adult fan base, there wouldn't be no Friendship is Magic. There wouldn't be no Equestria Girls. And so if a major conglomerate like Hasbro can notice that and even accept that, then why can't anybody else? Why still, almost a decade later, do we still have people that don't understand? I'll tell you why. Because there are people that are programmed, as crazy as it sounds, to accept things as they are. I mean, look, I have a video on here on my channel where I said I wasn't a brony. Well, guess what? Things can change, and I ended up becoming a brony. Okay? Heck, even Andre Meadows, Black Nerd Comedy, he's not a brony. He's not a full-fledged fan. But guess what? He basically said that if Hasbro, who now owns Power Rangers, decides to do a sort of a hybrid collaboration and distribute Hasbro-inspired Power, decides to distribute Power Ranger-inspired pony figures, basically the Power Rangers as ponies, then he'll get it. He'll get those. He will. The thing is, in the end, I think the overall realization for anybody watching, overall realization for anybody that still don't get it, that grew up in a time like I did, the 80s, the 90s, the late 70s, I want you to go back and watch your old 80s, 90s cartoons and see how good the stories were there, how good the character development and world building was there. And then go and watch something like Friendship is Magic, Equestria Girls, Gravity Falls, Star vs. the Forces of Evil, Steven Universe, Adventure Time. Go and watch them and see the similarities. And then you'll probably have an understanding, a better understanding, hopefully, as to why people like Friendship is Magic, why the adults today like it, make up a majority of the community, of the fan base. Why Hasbro goes out of the way to do things like what I just showed you. I want you guys, I want those that still don't have an understanding to do that. To go back and watch those original 80s, 90s cartoons and see the similarities when it comes to world building, character development, and storytelling. And I think you'll end up gaining a more better appreciation about what you see. Because, to be honest, this is getting ridiculous. Almost a decade later, and we still have people quit looking at the overall fan base. This overall fan base of made up majority of adult fans who happen to be parents themselves, as being weird and unsettling. And look, I get what's happened in the past with some of the major or semi-major analysis community members like Toon Critic and a few others. I get that doesn't shine that doesn't I get that doesn't shine a bright light or a positive light on this community. But guess what? This community has proven, this fan base has proven that even in the darkest of times, they can bounce back into the light, and they have done that. They have done that. Point is, folks, in the end, you have to remember, you have, in the basically, folks, what I'm trying to say is, in the end, people are going to like what they want to like, whether you agree with it or you don't. But, as I said, if you want to have a good understanding, or at least a decent understanding, as to why adult fans like My Little Pony Friendship is Magic and Equestria Girls, and other shows similar to them like Gravity Falls, Steven Universe, Star, Adventure, you name it. Go back and watch your Generation 1 cartoons of the 80s and the 90s. Go back and watch cartoons back then and see the similarities when it comes to the storytelling, the world building, and the character development. And then hopefully you have a better understanding. Hopefully. But yeah, I think almost a decade in, I think this needs to stop. I really do. I think honestly, people have to have to basically hopefully have a better understanding to what's going on. So hopefully those watching without any problems can have a better understanding as to why, or not a better understanding, but I hope those watching in the community appreciate me coming out and doing and talking about this. I know I sound like I rambled, and I do apologize, and I sound like I repeated myself. I do apologize, but hopefully I was able to at least give my thoughts, my opinions on the situation. So let me know what you guys think down below. Again, I apologize for any lag or anything throughout. And that's really about it. So I will talk to y'all later. God bless. Take care.